It's it's happening. It's happening. Womp womp womp
What's
womp.
happening, Rebecca?
Welcome, Tony Porreco. I'm so excited you here today because you are undoubtedly one of my favorite people in the whole entire world. And watching you come up in your content genius in the last, like, I don't know, 6 years has been awesome to witness. And I have so many questions about this live show.
Cool.
Thanks for being here, baby.
You got it. Before we get into that, what is the show?
Oh my God. Thank you for reminding me. If you're new to the show or it's your first time here, I am Rebecca Gunter. This is Stone Fruit Roll-Up. It is a live weekly show that we are doing on YouTube that is happening right here before your eyes. We are building the show in real time because why not? It's a live platform. So I've spent the last 3 weeks inviting my friends and colleagues who are in all kinds of intersecting spaces about content development, production, video, live streaming. You're here with wearing your audio hat to help me figure out how to actually create a live show from scratch that is worth watching. So already you're helping me remember that my hosting shops, this is not a live Zoom. How do people start shifting from the modality of like kind of just being in a Zoom or being used to this platform to remembering that they're actually hosting? Question mark.
Have a bit that you do every time to start, so that you can never forget how to start something. Like um, um, well, let's roll up to this episode of Stone Fruit Roll Up and get Rockstar parking because you have to start before you roll out. I don't know. Like I'm just shooting from the hip here. Um, Before we get going, question for you, Rebecca, and that is, tell me about any and all relationship you have or had with fruit roll-ups.
First of all, my mom is an ingredient only household. Do you know what that means?
That sounds like some sort of raw food business,
Yeah,
maybe.
an ingredient only household
That's what. Yeah,
is
you cook with the
is
not raw.
yeah, so there you're never like opening the cabinet and like pulling out a can of Chef Boyardee or a box of Kraft macaroni and cheese. You're not opening your refrigerator and finding like ready to eat food. You have to make everything. That is to say that my mom made her own fruit roll-ups,
Wow.
which it's otherwise known in the like home cooking space as fruit leather. Fruit leather. I'm into fruit leather, and you essentially boil it down into like a almost a jam like quality and like spread it over wax paper and then it kind of hardens and you can roll it up.
Now, did your mom ever get involved, like like maybe the big box named fruit rolls? I just want to know, did she ever maybe use cookie cutters to then have designs so that you could have the experience of ripping out your own little stars, hearts, horseshoes, and balloons?
You are giving me second grade realness, Tony P. But no, because what's making me laugh here is you haven't had the pleasure of meeting my mom yet, but my mom is an artist. And when I mean like artist, like to the core of her DNA. So if she were ever to execute an idea where it's taking fruit roll-ups and using it to decorate cookies or to work with kids, she would have taken an X-Acto knife and like created all of the tiny little moments to do
Tiny little moments.
like Van Gogh's Starry Starry Night with fruit roll-ups. Like there's a television show from like way before your time called Bosom Buddies, which had Tom Hanks in it, and they both whittled, and they went to a cabin one time and they both were whittling, and their character names were Kip and Henry. And Kip says to Henry, "What'd you whittle?" And he's got a little stick, and he goes like, "Oh, a snake." And he goes to Henry, "What'd you whittle?" And he's got a working Ferrari. He goes, "A Ferrari." And he like spins it across the table. That's growing up with my mom with anything creative. I always whittled a stick, and she whittled a Ferrari.
I need to. I have ADD, ADHD, whatever. So I need to do something while I do other things. So I may need to try maybe a scenario while I whittle while I work.
You are the king of puns, which is why we get along so well. Your wordplay is brilliant. In fact,
Um,
you came up with a name for this show.
yeah, and I
Actually,
forgot. Like it was. It happens sometimes when I have a funny idea or a joke, and then I have to be told that I came up with something later on.
we've talked about this. You came up with the name Fruit Roll Up. Why is naming a show like that was irreverent, right? You came up with it on the fly. It was really cute. We adopted it. Great. An idea fell from the sky. But naming shows is really hard for people. How did you come up with a name? Did you come up with a name for your podcast, Hometown Sounds? Did you come up with that name? And if you didn't, what's brilliant about it? Or talk to us a little bit about naming.
Okay, so I do a podcast about dedicated to the world of DC music, Hometown Sounds. We show you how DC rocks.
There's
Although
your, there's
I've
your
been
bit.
thinking about, I don't know, changing that tagline because it's a little maybe genreist. We
That's so interesting. Ooh,
Oh,
I
it makes
have
me feel like
eyeliner all
a
over my eye.
makes me feel like a some kind of you know privileged whatever taking everything for granted. Like oh, of course we show you how DC rocks. Like, we don't show you how DC hip
You,
hops or
you,
electronics. You know,
or how
um,
we show you how DC Go Go's would be really
mhm,
cute.
you know,
Except for you'd have to be genre specific. So you have a
you know,
point.
yeah. No, but I mean, like, there's a still. I think it's still okay to say something rocks, right? That
It's
rock hasn't been canceled.
and The Rock hasn't been canceled. Although I will say he's a little oversaturated right now. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if The
Too
Rock's
many
PR
places.
people are watching, we're oversaturated with The Rock.
Mm-hmm. So
Well, I'll tell
you
you
guys,
what's brilliant about that. If I just can comment for a minute, T, is like when I hear you drop, we show you when people talk to you casually, like not in a workspace. When you meet people out in a party or you're out to dinner or you're getting to know someone and somehow or another podcasting comes up or music comes up and your podcast comes up and people learn about it, the way you say, we show you how DC rocks instantly connects the audience with what the podcast is about. It's unquestionable what it's about. And I think you've achieved like a nirvana with that tagline because it's more, you know how sometimes with taglines it's more clever than clear? You've really nailed clever and clear in that scenario.
oh, thanks, you're sweet. But no, so I there's purpose behind that, and actually, I think that's kind of what sort of generally tied what I think we'll be talking about today. And when I say we, I mean like telling you what I think. But
That's what we're here for.
but I always have that tagline ready to go at a moment's notice, so that I never don't know what to say, or so that I'm never shy, I'm never embarrassed. It's the having the elevator pitch in your pocket.
That's absolutely right. But it doesn't sound canned like an elevator pitch. And I think when we do elevator pitches or we have something kind of like in our pocket to drop in networking situations, it can
Drop it
be,
in pocket.
see, pop it and lock it.
Mm-hmm.
It can be sound just like canned or forced, but you found something that feels very natural to you. I think that's a really good pro tip for the folks at home about having a branded phrase. That's really what that is a branded phrase or a little tagline that you can use to talk about what you do in a very succinct, like on point manner. Good job, Ray.
Yep. Thanks. But no. So the purpose there is just to no matter how you're feeling, no matter how crummy or ashamed of your thing, you are on a given day, it still is what it is, and you can just be like, we show you how DC rocks. More often, I'll do like a we show you how DC rocks as just sort of a wink and a nod of the oh, I'm telling you about my thing, you know.
What would you say about this show? Could you do you have a little we show what to who so
I
far?
mean, like maybe you'll come with. I mean, let's put that on the shelf as we continue talking today. Come on.
I don't think so. Well, I guess really the point is you have to figure out what the show is about. At least Hometown Sounds is very clear, very distinct, like very the container is well defined. DC DMV music that you don't really do many repeats, right? Have you ever done a repeat song in the 10 years of
Only
doing
on
that show?
very specific special occasions.
Yeah, so
Specific and special, not one or the other.
How do you? Because it's everything is specific, then nothing is specific.
Yeah.
How do you come up with that tight container? Day like week after week after week after week, and not lose focus. Like the show really is very clearly defined. How do you do that without losing? I don't know. Maybe creativity or
Well,
passion for it.
okay, so to say a little bit more about the show, we'll play 5 or 6 songs and talk about them. Actually, my very first Chat GPT query the other night was, "Tell me about the podcast Hometown Sounds," and it nailed it. It was insane. It was like 3 full, robust paragraphs with only two, you know, I mean, like given the circumstances, minor errors of like it labeled me as a graphic designer. I'm like, how'd that happen? That's weird.
It's not even.
Uh,
It's not even close. It's
I
not
mean,
even.
I think I don't know. I mean, like you try to get into the like, oh, what did the algorithm do here? I'm like, oh, maybe it just found different graphics for things I'd made over time or
Do you
something.
think that there's an alternative universe where the Tony Porreco in that universe is a graphic designer
I don't think so because
and
I
his
think
is
I'd
like
have to have a
global
different set
arts?
of skills, and I don't, like I don't know. I will say, what are your thoughts on the multiverse? I think it's bullshit.
You do? I mean, I think honestly, I feel like we would be fool. Is the hubris of thinking that what humans see is the absolute truth and what humans experience is all there is and we know all there is. I think that's extremely naive. We could very much be living in just a razor thin dimension surrounded by other life. We don't know that. Why is our world finite? I'm just saying.
But now let's lift things up again. Rebecca, how do computers get drunk?
They drink a dram of ram.
That's pretty good. Nice job. But our show when we were they take screenshots.
Oh, but
You know,
shots. That's fun.
if that were the case, my computer would be so drunk. That's all I do is take screenshots because I use them as a great tool to show people what I'm seeing and to troubleshoot errors. It's a way to give people a point of view, and then I will circle things in red because I'm like, you want to show people what the deal is. All right, so
You
let's
did
get.
that before we got started, and I would really actually like to talk just a tiny bit about what happened before we got started because anybody who's starting something for the very first time who doesn't have all the equipment, maybe I have my camera from for meetings. I have my mic because you're the kindest person in the world. I have my ring light because you're the kindest person in the world. So, I'm kind of
I'm a
rolling
kindness colleges.
with collagen. Um, so the equipment hustle is like such a big deal. And Paul went into like specifics last week about what kind of equipment he uses for success. But I really struggled with getting the camera, the microphone, and the power USB C in my laptop happening all at the same time. And you had a brilliant idea to kind of divert the power through the hub. So, like, what kind of, and it's anxiety provoking. Like, we're going live in 2 minutes. I have to restart my computer. Like, the mic's not picking up my headphones. It's all this kind of drama. How do people mitigate that and not let it kind of shut them down from the joy of actually producing some sort of podcast or live show or whatever it is?
I think that in this instance it was troubleshooting. It's a little bit of, uh, I think, looking to relying on context clues and being like, well, what are the things around something I understand? And I know that sometimes USB-C ports on USB hubs can be weird about what devices they will power or connect.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, like, I mean, your camera has a USB-C connection, and there's still some things about US. I don't know the ins and outs of USB-C that great, but I did know that you had different ports to plug things into, and that you did have a USB-C port on your hub that I was like, I don't think there's anything in that one right now. So let's just see what happens.
She was open. She was open for parking for sure, but really about like that whole kind of tech jumble before a novice person goes live. How can you offer us any advice about how to kind of just mitigate the anxiety of like not always knowing your equipment, or what kind of approach would you take if you didn't know something, but were like gonna just do it anyway?
Um, I think I think the canned answer here is like test your shit. Like I mean, with
Hmm.
people, I mean things in advance. To test sessions to know that when I click this and have things set up as such, I get this result. And then once you know that, then you can forget about it, and then you have more brain space to be brilliant.
And to I'm gonna work on that, um and to be like calm and kind of ready for it. I never buy myself enough time. Both you and Paul had me get on a pre-production call to make sure everything was working, and I generally like kind of get in here. I've just run the carpool. I drop my kid off. I come back in. I throw on makeup. I do the thing, and then I jump in. But that makes the show feel. Does that make the show feel frenetic to the audience? Like what? I
And
don't
then
know.
it's just a little bit of like, well, how stressed out are you, and how visible is it going to
Yeah.
do you look? Instead
It,
of that, I mean, are you a stone cold sociopath? Then
I'm a stone fruit sociopath.
Ah, yeah,
That's what I am.
very good.
Yeah.
No.
Anybody
Actually,
struggling with.
on that note of, how about you check the comments and maybe make sure that we're live? How about that?
That's hilarious. I should totally do that. Also, I was just about to say, if Paul were here right now, he would be telling me I need to check the comments and engaging with people. Look, I'll have to start a whole new window. I'm sorry, everybody. This is a great idea. How do you manage all these windows in production when it's just you?
Well, like what I'm doing right now is that I have my browser with Riverside, our streaming recording platform, like where we're doing the recording through. I have that dead center, middle of the screen, and I've actually put you right beneath my camera so that when I look at you, I'm still kind of looking at the camera.
Oh, that's a struggle.
Yeah. Otherwise, another monitor. Having. I mean, the point is to have more real estate to put stuff. You know, it's counter space.
That's interesting. All right. Well, let's listen. What I really want to talk to you about more. We are live. We are totally doing it. It's
Great.
here. It's happening. What I really want to talk to you about, I guess, are like around what makes a good show in your opinion. You are a meticulous professional. You spend an exorbitant amount of time getting show notes to like ape like you couldn't find a flaw in your show notes. Your titles are short and they really and you understand how episode art works within like a podcast player. You have all of these moving parts that come together. Like, no, you just can't be just a great personality, sadly for me. Womp womp. How do you put together what you think is a good show? Like, what are the elements of that have to be handled? Is it about the integrity of every single asset? Is it about like the theme or the point of the show? Is it about the host? Is it about the guests? You listen to like 24 million podcasts a day. What is it that makes it awesome? What is content worth listening to or worth watching?
Um, I think that. I think that the one advantage
One.
of being talented and that sort of alchemical haziness, nebulous nature of like, oh, if you're awesome and hilarious, then you probably have to work less at some of the uh, production and individual elements of things. But anyway, you asked the question of what makes a good show. I mean, an answer I supplied last week in the chat was something an inch wide and a mile deep. It's being able to. I mean, I don't know. I think that there's music appreciation, and then there's history of death metal. Like being like I
That's
think
a
that
good
that's
example.
where yeah I think that it's where you I mean when people get into nerding out, they want to know everything, and that's where I think the fun is. Um, yeah, so I mean, there I think that it is being able to talk about things, using an auger to the core of the planet. Like it's just down, baby, down by the watermelons,
Down by the
down
sea.
by the bay. Did you
Hey,
ever see a moose eating a goose? That's the one I use whenever I want to make people laugh with that song, like because that's screwed up.
well, those are some great words
No,
to play with for sure.
no. But anyway, so like, why don't we stay on the topic of what makes a good show until you're ready to get into show notes, which is I have its own topic. But I mean, like, so
Okay.
what else do we want to talk about right now?
I think the major existential crisis that I have with coming up for like what are we going a mile deep on and an inch wide is like the purpose for existing. So
Oh boy.
Hometown Sounds is like a passion project for you. It's, you love music, you love live music, you spend a lot of time coming up in DC amongst this like echelon of musicians. It's a real like community feel to it. And so here's a passion project. It's not what you do every day, but people would encourage an entrepreneur like myself to start a show to promote their business. And to me, then we have this like glut of content that's like the business owner expert and their expert guests. Let's talk about how to do something, which is exactly what we're doing right now. So I'm not punching down at that, but I wonder about like how watchable is that to somebody week after week, and is there a way to develop a show that's not about like it's not about the toast, meaning it's not necessarily about entrepreneurship, but it still is very watchable for that specific audience. That's really
Um,
where I'm stuck.
sure. I think that, and I'll use my show as an example here, but I think it's about finding of authentic content and authentic stories with whatever. And the thing is that something that makes my podcast, replicable, episode after episode, is that it's similar to a good conversation in that, you change out parts and then talk about the new parts of stuff that but there's a framework that already exists. So it's, I mean, as in, all right, so we play a new set of artists. All those people have stories and there's stuff about them. You do a Google search and you find, I mean, and then, I mean, that's kind of what happens where it's, well, first, is the music good? Start there. And then two, who are these people and what are their stories? So then, what's you look things up and you're like, what's interesting, what's funny, as in, why do you want to talk about something? Things are a lot worse when they're a book report, an assignment that you have to do. It's a lot easier if you're talking about what genuinely catches your eye.
Yeah, well, and you have a gift for that. I think that what happens with your guests is one, they feel like really seen. Two, you're always so prepared. You spend hours looking over Instagram stories and what's the music platform where you can down
Bandcamp,
Bandcamp, and then
who are
Bandcamp
owned by
and
Fortnite. Do a
really,
little dance. Do a little dance, y'all.
dude, I don't know what's the Fortnite dance. I only know the TikTok dances.
It's your characters in Fortnite. After you smoke someone, you can shake your rump.
Okay, well I know
So,
that's a thing. I'm for virtual rump shaking, as well. I forgot what we were talking about already. To see, how do you remember your train of thought? It's having that program. You've got a set list, and I'm just flying off the cuff. And then my conversation meanders down a stream, and then I get distracted by like my eyeliner is all like on the top of my lid, and I can't stop staring at it. And then I have anxiety that we're live, and I forget what you're talking about. So how do you stay on task? Is my point.
I think I would say use the turns when you're not talking to think where you want to go next.
I would argue that you already know where you're going to go next. Like you're looking 3 moves ahead when it comes to an interview.
I mean, I've done some preparation for today, and there's a bit of, yeah. I mean, like there's I mean the best I mean a fun trick. See, now I don't know what I'm talking about. See, don't believe me, just watch. uh I generally have some idea of things we're going to talk about. I think that's all you're seeing.
Well, I don't know. When it seems like you will come with a list of questions, like you will be ready to talk to people about whatever it is, and it feels like it has structure and flow. Definitely from Paul, I'm learning that structure is paramount, and it's, as you know from years and years of learning, watching me with my writing practice, structure is a struggle for me. So, how do people who don't naturally structure start to create a show that's watchable?
Uh, Identify the individual like subjects of what you're going to talk about in a show. And I mean subjects of like, oh, it's these 5 songs. It's these 3 topics. It's these number of questions. And then, with questions, no, you need to end the chit chat at some point and move on to the next question. That's it. I mean, like,
Good segue.
Speaking of, I'm actually getting a little. I need I need some orange slices and some Gatorade. I'd like a break from being featured right now. So, speaking of questions, Rebecca, you as a copywriter, tell us about the most recent piece of writing you encountered. Anything that made you go, "Wow, that's good."
There's a new ad campaign for oat milk, and it is I wish I had the copy in front of me, so I'll have to I'll have to post it in the show notes. Okay, you'll have to get me there with show notes. But oat milk.
Do we have any accounts of horses enjoying oat milk?
Nay, nay, we don't. Quit hoofing around. Listen. Anyway, they bought out 2 huge billboards in Times Square to promote a newsletter about how to use oat milk. And it is very well done. So I think that copy that takes me by surprise, and it's not all the time. I mean, there's some great copy out there, of course, but mostly you get kind of used to seeing the same thing. But when someone takes this really gravitas advertising vehicle and does something, I don't know, irreverent is the word with it, that's been an awesome piece of copy that I came across lately. It had me saying I wish I wrote that. I also wish I wrote, our friend Ross Brand has a new project he'll tell us all about in an upcoming episode of the Roll-Up. But their tagline was "Egos Aside." And I thought that was beautiful for creators. Egos aside. So there's 2 pieces of copy I think have really sung for me lately.
Egos aside. That is good.
Yeah. For creators, for a channel of original creators. Egos aside. I think that's really cool. Their production meeting. So, those are 2 pieces of copy that really had me saying, I wish I wrote that.
Cool. So what are we talking about next, Rebecca?
Yes, Tony, I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't address show notes. And I know that maybe that seems like a boring topic for folks who are like, just show me how to do the show. That's an admin thing I can get ChatGPT to do. I can get a transcript. Is even important? I hear Jill in my ear about SEO with show notes, and I'm just
the SEO Speedwagon.
I'm just oh Lord. Tech fail.
It's not a tech fail. It's just do not disturb, and you'll use it next time.
That's what I'm saying. That I'm not used to. That I'm not doing.
Mm-hmm. All right, show notes. Let's get into it. Before we get into the more of how to do it, I think the first question is that you need to address and do a meditation on.
Why?
Is what kind of show notes do you need? I mean, duh, yeah, why? All right, sure. All right, so okay,
yeah, why?
You're gonna name. I mean, we're talking about podcasts right now. So I think that maybe a lot of my remarks are going to be that. I didn't know we were going to be talking about movie titles or whatever. But anyway, so...
or live stream titles,
yeah.
Or anything that you're going to see on the internet, and you're going to be in a player, right? Like a podcast player or YouTube or whatever.
Yes. So, you are going to have to come up with a title for your episode. You are going to probably have to type something in the show notes field. And I think it actually, I mean, as I think AI and ChatGPT headlines kind of remind us, it does eventually, when you're exploring podcasts or deciding if you're going to download something, text still has an important role because those are cues that can tell you something about whether you're going to download something, that help you make that
What
decision.
is it? What is it? What's the kind of things it's telling you?
Well, like, I mean, I let me tell you actually what I really want to talk about is when you're not being told things. And what I mean by this is actually I think that creators in maybe the comedy, more lighthearted shows, straight interview shows, etc., can often have it a lot easier. And what I mean by that is that, like, there are lots of podcasts that I listen to where the episode title is like episode 783, Courtney Barnett, like episode 400, Paul F. Tompkins. Like, there's a bit of the it's an episode number, and there's a bit of no introduction needed beyond this.
Well, you're
You
Paul
know,
F. Tompkins. Okay.
exactly. Yeah. Or in like, so I think that if you are in a category of shows where it's about either horsing around or guests have some recognizability, you are kind of off the hook, and then you likely have to do less work. And like for like some of these like sort of more entertainment horsing around shows, they show notes. A couple of examples are Courtney Gilmore returns to talk perfume, poached eggs, and cookbooks. That's it.
So,
Um,
so a teaser, using kind of FOMO.
yeah, but actually, my point here actually is look at how little it's actually telling you and how easy you can make things for yourself if you happen to have that kind of show where you don't need to do this.
So,
And
so
yeah.
at this point, being more clever than clear is compelling.
No, you don't even have to be clever, and I think this is something that I am like saying these days, and that vanilla is a flavor, and it's a fine flavor. Sometimes plain yogurt is totally great, and because and you can. I mean, we'll talk about cleverdom in a bit, but you if you fall into the category of no, I don't need a clever or involved show title, great. That's so much more time. You have to do lots of other things.
Okay, now what about show notes? What's the
Yep.
point?
So okay, I mean, I think the way that I was thinking about this morning is that an episode title for a podcast is it's a headline, and then I think that show notes would be like a flyer or maybe an entry in TV Guide. I know TV Guide's not really a thing anymore.
Now who's
but
watching Bosom Buddies?
Yeah, I mean,
See?
like, who's like Niles lusts after Daisy. Like that would be Frasier and TV Guide, right?
That's actually Daphne.
Thank you.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
Now I want to know who Daisy is.
She's a princess. She's an odd she's a Mario princess who I first encountered in Super Mario Land on the Game Boy.
Mario is it's a thing for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So is there, like, when I hear show notes, I hear Jill in my ear being like, SEO, SEO. So, like, is that why people do show notes, or is it to round out the full audience experience? Maybe the answer is yes to both. How
It's
important?
both. I am not. I don't know jack about SEO beyond the more information, the more real good information you attach to stuff in fields you have available to you. I hear that works.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the yeah. I mean, I think that actually, uh, as I was saying, like, I think that show notes uh, and titles have a bigger role for shows and content creators who have something to prove and don't have immediate star quality talent
Mm-hmm.
like some McElroy brothers, where the name of their new podcast episode is The Adventure Zone episode 20, like The Adventure Zone Steeplechase episode 20.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's they don't need to come up with a joke about what it about something because Yeah, they could do it, but actually, I think that it's probably good for the SEO because then it's just like, oh, it's a thing in the adventure zone, you know.
Yeah, that's what I was actually about to say. It seems like what you're describing there with the McElroys is that they've really done a very good job creating a branded universe that has several shows in it, and the fandom understands the lexicon kind of across all the mediums. Is that true?
Um, could you say more about what you mean? I mean, it's they have a uniform, they have a a what I'm talking about here, just with like it's the same thing as like episode 400 or whatever. It's I mean the content supersedes the show notes often because it's
Okay.
yeah.
Well, in your professional iteration there as producing podcasts and webinars at SHRM, show
The
notes.
Society for Human Resource Management.
I was just
Yes.
about to
All
say.
right.
I was just about to say it. Your show notes are like could be framed in a gallery, but they take you a very very long time. I'd love to hear about your process, particularly because the episode of this episode is about kind of process and keeping your shit together so you can create uh, tasty content. Beautiful title. How do you?
Yeah, and actually, let's talk about that. Because this was hard. So I came up with this title, which was methodizing your creativity, which graphic artist Becky turned was smart to pare down to methodize creativity, like as in made it shorter, easier to fit on a on a graphic, but like I had to ask you like 10 questions because I was like, what are we actually talking about here? And in the context of show notes, it was what I landed on was methodizing creativity because it's knowledge work that you have to know how to do over and over again. You have to pull it off every single time. And that
When you say pull it off, tell us
like
what
an
it
episode title and
means.
show notes. An episode title and episode show notes.
What's the whole set of like a podcast episode or a live stream or whatever? Because they're all kind of function the same. What's the whole set that you
What's
have to
the
have?
set? I mean, like, what's the set? What's the set of what? Sorry, you gotta ask you.
And you have to have an episode title, show notes, a recording, an intro, episode art, um, like an upload vehicle, like every single thing has a say. If you say you have to get really good at doing the same thing over and over again, and we're talking about creating a methodology, what I want to know is, in your opinion, what is the absolute set that needs to happen every single time
Well, I
in
didn't know we were
order to call
talking
it a
about
set?
that. I didn't know I had to know how to, like how to. I just mean,
What's the
the
bare
number,
minimum?
the number of tools and things put,
I
are available.
see.
I'm just thinking, whether you're streaming to whatever, like there's a, you know what I mean? Like, oh, and there's a LinkedIn like white paper or whatever,
Okay,
I
so
mean,
the set it depends on your show and your content set, and then once you know what that is, then you create the methodology so that you can repeat it and still be creative within the space within the kind of functionality of that question mark.
yes. Yeah, and I mean, and that's what I mean. I think that the topic of show notes, an episode title, and an episode description, an episode summary, show notes, is an example of that. Of because it sucks doing everything for the first time. So the point is so you're not doing it for the first time every time.
Ah, yeah, it feels like the first time every time with Stonefruit Roll Up. It definitely feels like the fruit leather is still being set. Um, I would love to be able to really. I'd love to show the folks at home how awesome your show notes are. They're just like you have this your methodology or kind of the repeatable process for you results in these extremely clean like 5 paragraph like what how do you take like maybe a show you haven't even listened to, well you do have to listen to it obviously, but how do you take maybe a show you weren't participating in the creation of and generate
Yep.
these
Cool.
like
Let's do it. Sure.
thank you.
Um, so again, text and it continues to be so important in knowing what things are about. And even before all the chatter about the AIs and stuff, I work with a transcript, a readable representation of every podcast I work with, because it's now a part of the amazing editing tool I use, Descript. And so you start there where it's like, okay, so now I can read what this is about, and that's so much faster than listening to it, because I can read a thing that's an hour so much faster than I can, watch and listen to it.
Oh my
Uh,
God! When I do an email for a client that is around one of their podcast episodes, it could be a 3 hour lift for me to sit, listen, pause, handwrite notes, listen, pause, handwrite notes. I mean, a 15-minute episode can take me 90 minutes
yeah,
to write
that's
an
so.
email
So
out.
if you can instead just put that in front of you via whatever a transcription tool, then that's a way to like get you there. Because the point is all right. So an episode title and episode summary. Uh, Start with figure out the most. What is this thing really about, and how can I say that in like under a sentence? What is this episode about? And so start there, because those are sort of like the foundational blocks. And then and then see, I'm being terrible talking about this thing that I
No, but you're
purport to know.
resonating with me so hard, Tony, because that's how I start copy. Is that I really, if I don't immediately know the angle, I sit there and I kind of like really meditate on what am I really trying to say. If this person were directly in front of me, or another person were directly in front of me, and I knew them, how would I frame what I'm about to say? And I think that you and I have a very similar starting block in what are we really saying here? And cutting through the noise of like,
Something that's an hour long of people talking. How could I say what this is about in 3 to 5 words?
how long are your show notes? They're like 3 paragraphs?
No, they're not. No, they're more typically 2.5 to 4 sentences.
2.5 to 4 sentences.
Let me read some. Let me
Oh
read
my
one.
God, that's great news.
Managing employee attendance is challenging. Employers and people managers need to know not only if employees are showing up to work, but also what to do if they don't. In this episode of Honest HR, host Amber Clayton speaks with SHRM knowledge advisors Barbara Holland and Julie Schweber about handling scenarios such as fishy doctor's notes, what to do about no-call, no-shows, and above all, the importance of getting all the information before moving toward adverse action. That's one, two, it's like 3 sentences.
What you've done there, though, isn't to be just kind of like, oh, that's good. Because there's such a weighted conversation in the zeitgeist about the tension between employer and employee right now, and what like calling and butts and seats and work from home, and like whether or not you have to be managed or supervised. So you were able to strip that whole show notes from like the weightiness of, fishy sick notes. Like that almost gives me PTSD to be thinking about my leadership team having a conversation about whether or not I'm bullshitting about a doctor's note. But you're able to present it in a way that I see it cleanly within context without the emotion. You're not emoting it. You in these show notes have kind of like, I don't want to say strip the emotion, but you have stripped like the tension out of it.
Yeah, and so I think that actually, by the way, first off, let me just do a little humble brag here. Yep, that episode title, that title is Managing Time and Attendance, Calling Out Employees Who Call Out. And
That's gold. That's
no,
gold.
yeah, and that is a moment of like that was lightning striking, and that's a lot. That is what I mean by there's nothing wrong with vanilla. Vanilla is a totally fine flavor, but there, if you sometimes you have a great idea, and that's awesome, but you can't always. So, I went through. So let me tell you about the work now. Like it's actually the actual work. So otherwise, it just sounds like I'm a dude who's like, oh yeah, that's how I do my job, and I'm just dart dart dart. But okay, you do a draft of an episode title, and then what you do is do a line break, copy and paste it, and then begin changing things. And instead of deleting the whole thing and starting over, keep playing around and changing things word by word, because it's a lot easier to change or make something a little bit better than start over.
I cannot tell you how happy I am that you took the conversation in the direction of what is the work, because I think that a real kind of hole in the Swiss cheese here in this type of programming is,
What are the action steps? It's always about the action steps.
Like, what's the real work? Like, you're telling me why I should do show notes, and I am, as the host, I'm asking you why we should do show notes, and you answered that beautifully. But showing us how to do the work is what I think is missing from this kind of content. What is the work? What do you actually?
And like some more examples of this. Like when I asked you, what are we talking about? And I had to ask you a bunch of questions, and like, and like some iterations were the topic is creative workflow, the creative method, approaching content, how to approach content, but then it got better. Reliable processes for tasty content. Then I had tasty content because, I mean, if there's going to be content, it should be good. But then I was like, I like the word dependable more and depend more than rely. I think that there's some more weight to the word depend. So like, as in do that new line break and write it again, and then punch in the new, try to find the ways to add those new words that you think are better and mean more. And I say this to you often, and we kind of joke fight about this, but my recipe often is to
do it differently.
Is to do something again differently, and then it will be better. Don't do it better. Don't just say I'm going to do it better, but do it differently, because open yourself up to the possibility of, I don't know what I'm going to get. I'm just going to try this again and try to capture it a little more than I did last time. Which is, I know that I do end up leading myself toward, oh, you're just saying do it better. But no, it's try it again. And I also, like, I don't know. Yeah, go.
I was just going to say, that reminds me, I shared with the LinkedIn audience yesterday how many creative endeavors you've pushed me in kindness to do so that I can get better. And one of them has been around writing workshops, taken at the Writer's Center, right there down the street from you in Bethesda, Maryland. And writing from the writing prompt, stopping and starting again at another paragraph is a writing exercise that has absolutely opened up my eyes to, like, how to tell the story more interest. Like, usually the story really does start 3 paragraphs in or 3 sentences in, but we feel the need to, like, have this little lead up. So starting again allows you to, like, you've got
starting again, but from within and during.
See, now I know where to get the finger guns. Jill, that's where I'm getting the finger guns. Also, in the comments, since that's something I'm supposed to be doing, Kathleen wants to know if closed captioning is important and the role of transcripts in show notes.
So closed captions are increasingly a thing that are moving from very cool niche feature to like, if you're on a major platform, you should have, like, if you make an Instagram, you can add captions. I mean, so I guess this kind of goes back to the importance of transcripts, because this is tied to having the text available for whatever format. I mean, like, it's certainly closed captions specifically. I mean, closed captions are for I believe specifically for in the realm of live stuff, and if you're watching a recording of something, and there might be closed captions. So I mean, they are important in that they create more inclusivity, because someone who can't hear can read. But I mean, I'm then just also guessing that closed captioning helps make its way into SEO as well. So I mean, like,
and also accessibility.
Go. That's exactly what I mean. Inclusivity, accessibility. Yes.
Yeah, which I think is a huge thing that's been really overlooked for many years in concept development and web development, is just it's not just about people who are blind It's not just about like kind of these major things that are holding back from people from accessing the content. One thing I learned working with an accessibility forward web designer is about how when you have a form and you have the choice of having the words in the in the form fill or dropping out, when you have them in the form fill, it's really hard on people with short-term memory loss and ADHD because the answer goes away and the prompt is no longer there. So thinking about these little aspects of ways that you can add accessibility into your content is good for everyone. I certainly love the subtitles on when I'm watching The
Oh, like
Mandalorian.
I don't. I mean, I remember the days when I was like subtitles, having subtitles on while I watched a movie. That's weird. And now I'm like, oh, I don't know if it's just getting older and losing your hearing or whatever. But instead it's like I did not understand that very small interaction that might be important, and it's a lot.
That's
It's
it right there.
otherwise I have to watch the thing like 4 times to hear like the sandwiches in the fridge. You know.
That's the thing right there is it's a very small but paramount piece of communication that is often overlooked or dismissed. And maybe that's also the point about show notes.
So show me
Yeah.
the show notes.
Show me the show
Show
notes.
me the show notes.
Where do you want now? You're gonna yell at me for asking you this off the wall question, but like we're coming to the close of this wonderful live, and something I've been really curious about you lately is where you want to see the medium go, whether it's podcasting.
A podcast? What medium?
Okay, let's just stay with podcasting because that's your jam. Where would you like to see that medium go? What direction, or
What do
what's
you mean
missing?
by go? Like, what do you mean by direction?
What's missing right now in the like podcast sphere? And I guess I'm kind of asking about trends in a roundabout way, or what you would like. I wish podcasts would start doing this thing, and I wish content creators would remember this, and I wish we'd go in this direction. And maybe your answer is about more authenticity, less service selling. I'm not sure.
Um, I mean, I this is a hard question because I think that there's a large part of me that's just like, I like my show, I like my stories, I like my show, like I like my favorite 25 shows or whatever, and it's the intimacy of that parasocial relationship of feeling like someone's your friend, but you don't like things about them, but they don't know you. Like there's a bit of well, I don't know where I'd want the medium to go. I mean, as in only just that it keeps being there. I mean, I don't know. Like, I do feel threatened by the term video podcasting because,
Paul,
like,
shots fired.
no, I just mean like, I mean, also like, I know that I generally. There have many occasions, maybe even today, included, like live talking off the cuff. Not my medium.
I appreciate that you come through.
I am a take-home test kid. Remember those?
You are a take. Take one, take two,
Yeah.
take three with your
Oh
cooker.
yeah, that's very good. Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, I will say like, so when I see the term video podcasting, I mean, was like, I don't. I mean, the thing actually, one thing that I specifically love about podcasts is about how I can have nonstop content in my ears all day long without having to
Stop
put
and look at
myself
it.
in front of a device with having to watch something. Like some people do I'll just have this on in the background, but like I can't watch TV while I do dishes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe when you come back on a future show, you'll talk to us about how you
Yeah,
can
sure.
repurpose
Fine. Let me just
how you
kick
can
the can.
repurpose this kind of content into something that's audio only.
Yeah.
Tony,
Let me just do 3 other greatest hits of some podcast episode show titles.
do it.
Notifying the authorities when your HR department needs the police department. And actually, how I landed there was actually the Beatles song. It's the one from on the the suite of songs at the end of Abbey Road. And then Paul McCartney has this weird line where he goes, "So I quit the police department," and I was just thinking about different departments in an organization, and that's how I just thought about the police department, the HR department. So I was like, let me put those together. A career in total rewards is totally rewarding.
These are really sharp.
And yes, in HR, sometimes you do have to say that.
How long
That's
does it?
that takes
How long does it take you to come up with one of these?
sometimes hours.
Yeah, sometimes.
But no,
hours.
I mean, like, there's a little bit of like, of, you know, the time is variable. Yeah, for all of this. But the thing is, you know, it's a trite. It's a trite is tritism. I don't know if that's a word, but I mean, the part of identifying these processes so that you're never doing anything for the first time ever is because you know, I do agree with the statement of, you know, so often the only way out is through, and so knowing how to start going through, I think, is the point.
Well, we have gone through this show.
Mm-hmm.
We have gone through it.
So we rolled up. Now let's roll out.
Tony, where can people find you and connect with you?
Oh, yeah, smash that like button, subscribe. Buy me a virtual cup of coffee. People are doing that now. No, I don't do any of that. No, you can find my podcast in any of your whatever podcast player you use. It's called Hometown Sounds. You can find me on the LinkedIn and the LinkedIn's and the socials. If you write me, I'm happy to write back, but I don't do a lot of posting right now because there's a bit of actually like there was a summary on. Someone had a hot take on Facebook, and it was like, yeah, you know, lots of millennials and stuff are like not doing Facebook because they just get online and they get depressed because I don't know, it calls up, with like, oh, so many emotions, but like, maybe even shame, and shame is the long bag we drag behind us,
That's deep for somebody who always wants to punch up. You left us.
Oh, I know, no,
left us in our feels.
But we can. But no, I told you to. That's okay. That's fine. I mean, no. But in comedy, totally okay to punch down at yourself or the collective.
I disagree. The collective, maybe. Yourself, not so much. But we'll talk about on another show. As for me, you can find me on LinkedIn as well, right here on this channel. Also at stonefruit.com. That's stoned, STONED, fruit.com. And I will be here next week with the affable Ross Brown from Ross Brand.
Ross Brown.
Jeez Louise.
Which,
this is the lie.
The guy, how could he end up with a name, a last name so perfect and not have changed it?
I wish I wrote that. Yeah. The affable Ross Brand from Livestream Universe and 100 TV, who's going to come and really talk to us about livestream programming.
Choosy moms choose Ross, where you can dress for less.
That was awful because the way I said that seemed like, oh, he's really going to talk to us. Like, you didn't. You were amazing. I think the TLDR is identify processes that you're never going to be doing for the first time.
I know how to start, because it's so sad and depressing starting something over. So instead of it's just like, oh, it's a lot easier when you're like, I already know how to shovel the coal. Like, I just have to start shoveling coal.
And it's less overwhelming to do it that way, and you've helped me understand like the long game of the show. We certainly know how to start. We have certainly started. Raw, unscripted, doing it live. Why not? Right?
Raw dogging it, stone fruiting it.
Raw dog in the universe. That is that's a big thing I say. Cool. Tony, I'm really grateful that you took time out of your workday today to come and talk to me and talk to our audience about how you make the magic happen. You are my best friend, and I love you so much.
You're my best friend. I love you so much. Oh, you're my best friend. Aw.
You're my best friend. Also, all those Horseman jokes, all those BoJack Horseman jokes.
Yeah, I wasn't even. It was more just like thinking about the horse stuff.
What are you doing here?
What are you doing? Anyway, BoJack Horseman's best show ever. That's it. Call it a day.
Call it a day.
Bye.
Thank you, Tony. Bye.
I'm clicking stop now.